Okay, so you know how we're always told, like from the very beginning, that it's wrong to take a life,
Right.
to hurt someone. Like it's this basic moral rule we're supposed to follow. But then, like, you think about self-defense and it all gets super complicated.
Yeah, totally.
It becomes like, when is it actually okay to hurt someone else to protect yourself? Or someone else, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this really makes you, like, confront some deep ethical stuff, you know?
Right.
Like, you almost have to act
100.
like a philosopher when you're facing danger like that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of at the heart of what we're going to be looking at today. So we're going deep into the philosophy of self-defense.
Okay.
And we really want to understand, like, when is it actually morally acceptable to harm someone in self-defense and why?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be drawing on some, like, really rigorous philosophical work to figure this out.
Awesome. And so for this one, we're using a really fantastic resource, the Stanford Encyclopedia Philosophy entry on self-defense.
Nice.
It's super detailed, super comprehensive.
Yeah, it's dense.
It's really dense,
Uh-huh.
goes into all these little nuances.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
To break it down,
Exactly.
extract the key insights,
Mm.
and look at, like, what are the core debates here?
Yeah, because, I mean, when you're actually faced with a threat, it's not like you have time to sit down and, like, figure out all the nuances.
Right.
So hopefully this will, like, give some clarity and maybe some surprising perspectives on this whole thing.
Totally. So let's jump in. So the entry starts out by laying out two main ways that philosophers justify harming someone in self-defense.
Okay.
And these are liability and lesser evil.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference between these two? Like, what's the core distinction?
Yeah, so this is a super important distinction. The lesser evil justification basically says, okay, harming someone is always wrong, but it's permissible if it prevents a greater harm.
Okay.
Right. So think of the classic trolley problem.
Right.
You divert a runaway trolley to kill one person to save five. The person who's killed in that scenario, they still have a right not to be harmed, but that right's overridden for the greater good.
Right.
And because that right is overridden, there's this strong intuition that maybe they're owed compensation.
Okay.
Or even more controversially, maybe they're allowed to resist being used in that way.
Right. Okay.
But anyway, that's the lesser evil justification.
So it's like a regrettable but kind of like necessary thing. Like you said, override.
Exactly.
Okay. So how is liability different?
Liability says that in certain circumstances, an attacker actually loses the right not to be harmed, so they forfeit that right.
Okay.
So the classic example here is the murder case.
Mm-hmm.
Someone tries to kill you out of jealousy.
Right.
In that case, the attacker doesn't have any right to complain if you hurt them to save your own life.
Sure.
They've lost that right.
Okay.
And certainly there's no sense that they're owed compensation
Right.
or that they have a right to fight back against you.
Okay. So this is like, it's not just overridden.
Right.
It's like they've done something that has taken this right away.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the main idea here is that our moral rights aren't like these absolute things.
Right.
They depend on what we do. We can screw them up. We can forfeit them.
Okay. That makes sense. So now when we're talking about liability, what are some of the debates about what actually makes someone liable?
Mm-hmm.
So the entry talks about like agency and causal factors. What are the big arguments there?
Yeah, so that's a really important question. The grounds of liability, what makes someone liable?
Right.
And there's a lot of debate about this.
Okay.
One big area of focus is agency. So what does that mean? It's about the person's beliefs, their intentions, whether they're acting culpably, and their overall responsibility for the threat.
Okay. So like culpability, I feel like that's a pretty common sense one. Like if you're blameworthy for the threat, then you become liable. Is that kind of the gist of it?
Yeah, that's the culpability account, right? And it fits really well with the murder case, right?
Yeah.
The attacker is intentionally trying to kill the victim, and they're clearly blameworthy for that. So they're culpable and therefore liable to be harmed.
Okay.
But this approach runs into some problems when we look at other cases.
Okay.
So take the conscientious driver case.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's driving carefully, but they lose control of their car. And, you know, they're about to kill a pedestrian unless the pedestrian detonates an explosive that will harm the driver.
Right.
So the culpability account would say the driver's not liable because they weren't driving culpably.
Right. They were doing everything right.
Yeah.
But it feels wrong to say that the pedestrian can't defend themselves.
Exactly.
Like they're facing death, so they should be able to do something.
Exactly. So it seems like our intuitive understanding of self-defense goes beyond just blaming the person who's threatening us. Even innocent threats can trigger a right to self-defense.
Okay, so that's interesting. It's not just about whether they meant to do it, but whether they're posing this threat.
Yeah, the source of the danger seems to matter, not just the moral status of the person who's creating the danger.
Right. Okay. And what about the ray gun case,
Yeah.
where the person's falling through
Yeah.
no fault of their own, and they're about to crush someone who's trapped? So, like, is it okay to vaporize them with a ray gun?
Yeah. So, again, the person falling isn't acting intentionally or culpably.
Right.
They're just being carried by the wind.
Yeah.
So the culpability account would say they're not liable.
Oh.
But again, that clashes with the intuition that maybe the person in the well can use a ray gun to defend themselves.
Right. Okay.
So culpability alone doesn't quite capture everything about our moral intuitions.
It seems like something's missing.
Yeah.
Okay, so if culpability alone is not enough, what about the causal account?
Yeah.
So I think that's another big one.
Yeah, so that's the account championed by Judith Jarvis Thompson. She says what makes both the murderer and the innocent falling person liable is that they're each going to violate the victim's right not to be harmed unless the victim harms them first.
Okay.
So her controversial claim is that even the falling person in ray gun, they're threatening to violate the person in the well's right. Why? Because they lack the right to kill that person, and by falling, they're going to cause their death.
Okay, so it's not about intent, but it's about this whole chain of events.
Exactly, about who is on a path to violate your rights.
Okay.
So this view avoids those problems with the conscientious driver and ray gun that plague the culpability account.
Right.
But it also has some big objections. Like, critics point out that if just causing harm when you lack the right to do so counts as a rights violation, then even falling stones are violating rights, which seems ridiculous.
Right.
So Thompson tries to fix this by saying it has to be a moral agent,
Okay.
but it still seems like kind of a stretch.
Right. And what about, like, innocent obstructors? Like, someone standing in your way, but they're not trying to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, like, they're blocking your escape.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like it's okay to kill them to get away.
Yeah, this is a big problem for the causal account.
Okay.
Thompson actually says you can't harm innocent obstructors.
Okay.
But that creates a tension within her account.
Right.
It shows how hard it is to find a theory of liability that captures all of our intuitions.
Right. It's just not that simple.
No.
Okay, so we've got culpability, we've got pure causation.
Right.
Neither of those seems to be totally right.
Right.
What about the responsibility account? What's that all about?
Yeah, so the responsibility account, which is defended by people like McMahon and Otsuka, it says someone is liable if they are morally responsible for posing an unjust threat, even if they're not culpable, like blameworthy in the typical sense.
Okay.
So Otsuka gives these criteria for moral responsibility.
Okay.
Things like being of sound mind, having control over your actions, being aware of the danger of what you're doing.
Okay, so it shifts it a bit from just blame to their connection to this threat.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this account can handle cases where someone makes a reasonable mistake,
Cool.
like that mistake case.
Mm-hmm.
The homeowner mistakes the innocent twin for the murderer.
Right.
So the twin isn't culpable for appearing threatening.
Right.
But the homeowner, given the news reports and everything, they might be morally responsible for the threat they pose, even though it's a mistake.
Right.
And so the responsibility account says they're liable to be harmed in that situation.
Okay. And I think McMahon even argues that the conscientious driver is morally responsible because they chose to drive knowing it's risky.
Yeah, exactly. He's got this idea of moral gamblies.
Right.
So by doing risky things, even if they're generally permissible, you're taking a gamble.
Mm-hmm.
And if that gamble harms someone, then you bear some responsibility for that.
So it's like you're the one who should pay the cost, not the innocent person.
Exactly. It's fairer that way.
Okay. But there are some problems with this account too, right?
Nice.
Like that cell phone case, where someone's phone is rigged to explode and they don't know.
Yeah, that case highlights a big challenge. So McMahon says that the caller isn't liable because they had no idea their phone was rigged. Unlike the driver, who knows driving is risky.
Right.
But critics say, well, that's just a difference in how foreseeable the harm is.
Mm.
And it's not clear why that small difference should make such a big moral difference.
Right. Like, where do you draw the line on what counts as being morally responsible?
Exactly.
And the moral gamble idea is also a little strange in cases where you feel morally obligated to act.
Yeah.
Like a parent defending their child from what they think is a threat.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem fair to say they forfeit their rights in that situation.
Right.
And also, why is it just the driver who's responsible? Like, The pedestrian chose to be out walking, too.
Yeah, that's about symmetry. Why is the responsibility all on one side? So all of these criticisms show that it's really hard to pin down responsibility in a way that everyone agrees on.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on a bit and think about how causation plays into all this.
Okay.
The entry talks about local versus global views of liability.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference between those?
So the local view says you're only liable for harms that you yourself are causing.
Okay.
And the global view says your liability can extend to harms that prevent threats, even if other people are posing those threats.
Okay.
So it really makes us think about the limits of our moral responsibility.
Right. I feel like that simultaneous hitmen case is a good example here,
Yeah, classic case.
where Wayne can only defend himself against 2 hitmen by using each one as a shield against the other's bullet.
Exactly. So the local view would say that Wayne can't do that because he's using each hitman to prevent a threat that that particular hitman isn't causing.
Right.
But that seems really counterintuitive,
Yeah, that doesn't seem right.
right? So maybe we need a more global view of liability, at least sometimes.
Okay, so the global view. But the problem there is that it seems like it could make you liable for all kinds of threats that are totally unrelated to you.
Yeah, exactly. That's the challenge. If liability isn't tied to what you're directly causing, it's really hard to limit it in a way that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So what about where you are in the chain of causation? Like, are direct threats different from indirect threats?
Yeah, so there's this intuition that doing harm is worse than enabling harm,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
So you might think that only direct threateners are liable to be killed, not people who just contribute to the threat.
Okay.
But cases like Arrows, where you've got Andy firing poisoned arrows made by Annabelle and Annika poisoned them, that challenges this view.
Right. It doesn't seem right to say that Annika and Annabelle are totally off the hook.
Exactly.
Well-
So maybe liability can extend beyond just the person who's directly causing the harm, especially when they're all working together.
Right. If it's like a team effort.
Yeah. And a more subtle view is that both direct and indirect threateners can be liable,
Okay.
but it's harder to justify harming someone who's further down the chain.
Right.
So the Gun 1 and Gun 2 cases show this. Like, being forced to directly kill someone versus being forced to give someone a code that'll lead to someone else getting killed.
Right.
It seems like there's a difference there.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So it's harder to justify the direct killing, which might have implications for liability.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of, like, how much did you contribute?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if you pour a tiny bit of poison into a bathtub, and then that bathtub is used to hurt someone,
Right.
are you liable for that?
That's the bathtub case.
Yeah.
And that really challenges the idea that liability is proportional to your causal contribution,
Right.
especially when the harm is overdetermined. Like, even without your little bit of poison, the harm would have happened anyway.
Right, right.
So it makes us question whether causal contributions even come in degrees when we're talking about liability.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really out there.
Yeah.
Is any causal connection even needed for liability?
Yeah. So the entry talks about, like, futile attempters, omissions, and non-causal complicity.
Okay.
These are the fringe cases.
Right.
So in the firing squad case, only one rifle has a bullet.
Okay.
The victim doesn't know which one.
Right.
So even the people who didn't actually fire the bullet, they might still be liable. Maybe because they intended to do harm, even if they didn't actually cause it.
Okay.
And then cases about omissions, like Sally failing to rescue Jimmy from the river when she could have, that raises the question of whether failing to do your duty can make you liable for the harm.
Okay.
And then there's the redundant lookout case.
Okay.
Bob's a lookout for a bank robbery,
Mhm.
so he's not actually robbing the bank,
Yep.
but he shares the intention with the robbers.
Mhm.
So maybe he's liable to be harmed in self-defense.
Okay.
So these cases actually lend support to the culpability account.
Okay.
They suggest that maybe intention and participation can be enough for liability, even without direct causation.
Right. Okay, so that was a lot on liability.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears to agent relative justifications.
Okay.
So this is presented as like another way to think about why harming someone in self-defense might be okay.
Mm-hmm.
That goes beyond just liability or the lesser evil idea.
Right.
So what is this about?
Yeah, so agent relative justifications say we have these special moral permissions to give more weight to our own interests
Okay.
or the interests of those close to us.
Mhm.
So traditionally, this idea has been used to explain why we're not always obligated to help strangers.
Right.
Like if it's going to cost us a lot.
Right.
But here, they're saying maybe we also have a prerogative to harm others, to defend ourselves or our loved ones, even if those others aren't liable under the accounts we just discussed.
Right.
So maybe this could justify harming the falling person or the conscientious driver.
Right.
But it also raises questions about whether the person you harm can defend themselves against you and whether you owe them compensation.
Okay.
Yeah.
But where do you draw the line here?
Yeah, that's the main objection.
Like, could you justify eating a baby to survive based on this idea?
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't seem right.
So proponents of this idea have tried to set limits.
Okay.
But these limits often end up conflicting with our intuitions about not harming innocent people.
Okay, so even if you can defend yourself, there are still limits on what you can do,
Right.
which brings us to proportionality.
Right.
It's not just about whether you can defend yourself, but how you do it.
Exactly.
The force you use has to be appropriate to the threat.
Exactly.
So that slap case, where you respond to a slap with a flamethrower, that's clearly disproportionate.
Yeah, that's a classic example.
Okay, so the entry distinguishes between narrow and wide proportionality.
Mhm.
What's the difference?
So narrow proportionality is about the harm to the attacker.
Okay.
Is the amount of harm you inflict on them appropriate?
Okay.
Wide proportionality is about harm to anyone else who's not the attacker, like innocent bystanders.
Okay.
So in that case, you have to justify the harm to the innocent person,
Right.
which is basically a lesser evil justification.
Okay.
So the grenade case shows this well.
Right.
Defending yourself might harm a bystander.
Okay.
So you need both narrow and wide proportionality assessments.
Okay. And it seems like you could harm an attacker more than you could harm an innocent bystander.
Yeah, that's the general idea.
Like, if they're both threatened by, like, an explosion or something,
Mm-hmm.
you could shield the bystander more.
Yeah.
Okay? But this creates a problem when you're facing lots of attackers.
Right.
If they're all liable, can you kill a ton of them to save one person?
Yeah, that's the problem Francis Calm raises. And there's no easy answer.
Right.
Some people try to solve it by saying there's a limit to how much injustice we can tolerate.
Okay.
Even if each killing is okay on its own,
Yeah.
others say you need multiple justifications.
Right.
Or maybe even that the attackers aren't liable in that extreme case.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the link between proportionality and culpability?
Yeah.
So, should it matter how blameworthy the attacker is?
Some people say yes.
Okay.
So someone acting under duress or making a reasonable mistake, maybe they're liable to less harm than someone who's acting really badly.
Okay.
But Jonathan Klong disagrees.
Okay.
He uses examples like the muggings and assaults cases to argue that liability is about the right that's being threatened, not the attacker's culpability.
Okay, so it's more about what's at stake.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
The entry also talks about how the way you cause harm, the mode of agency, can matter for proportionality.
Mm-hmm.
So things like doing harm versus allowing it, intending harm versus it being a side effect.
Right.
And using someone as a means to an end.
Yeah.
So are these distinctions important?
Yeah, a lot of people think so,
Okay.
especially non-consequentialists.
Okay.
So causing a certain amount of harm in one way might be proportionate, but causing the same amount of harm in another way might be disproportionate.
Okay.
Like using someone as a shield is worse than them just getting harmed as a side effect.
Right.
And it's not clear whether these distinctions matter differently for narrow and wide proportionality.
Okay, so we need to think about who's being harmed
Yeah,
and how they're being harmed.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of what are the good effects you're trying to achieve when you defend yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So is it just stopping the immediate threat?
Not always.
Okay.
Like in that interrupted rescue case, defending yourself might stop you from saving someone else.
Right.
So that lost opportunity to do good is also something you have to consider.
Okay.
And some people argue that avoiding wrongs matters too, not just preventing harm. So you might be justified in causing more harm to stop an arsonist than to stop a natural fire,
Right.
because arson is wrong.
Okay.
And the gravity of the right that's being violated can matter too.
Okay.
Like if someone's in a special relationship with the victim.
Mm-hmm.
So negligently causing harm as a side effect might be different from negligently causing harm to achieve a goal.
Mm-hmm.
Like in those negligent side effect and negligent useful cases.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about whether you can defend yourself and how much force is proportionate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about how you should actually defend yourself?
Yeah.
This is where necessity comes in.
Right.
You should use the least harmful means possible to stop the threat.
Exactly.
So if you can stop someone by breaking their arm, you shouldn't kill them.
Right.
You should choose the option that's most likely to work and causes the least harm.
Exactly.
But like in the ledge case, you have to choose between pushing the villain off the ledge or jumping yourself.
Mm.
And it seems like it might be okay to push the villain,
Right.
even though it harms them more.
Yeah, because they're the liable one.
Right.
So harms to liable people might count for less.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do something super complicated if there's a simpler option that's likely to work.
Right.
And you also have to consider how likely each option is to actually work.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do liability and necessity relate to each other?
Yeah. This is where we get into internalism and externalism.
Okay.
Big debate.
Right.
So internalists, like McBanton, say that liability already includes a necessity constraint.
Okay.
You're only liable to the least harmful means necessary to stop the threat.
Okay.
So in the jump case, if the victim has a parachute, the attacker isn't liable to be shot.
Okay.
And in the poison case, where the poison's already been taken, the attacker isn't liable to anything else.
Right.
Internalism explains why using unnecessary force feels wrong, even against someone who's threatening you. But it also means that attackers might be able to defend themselves against disproportionate force.
Okay.
Yeah.
And externalists say that liability depends on the threat, not on what the victim can do.
Exactly.
So in both jump and poison, the attackers are still liable.
Right.
But then why is it wrong to harm them unnecessarily?
Yeah, that's the challenge for externalism.
Yeah.
If they've forfeited their right, why does it matter how much you harm them?
Right.
So there are modified views, like proportionate means externalism.
Okay.
It says liability is external, but the force still has to be proportionate.
Okay.
And the partialist account says that even people who forfeit some rights still have a right not to be seriously harmed unnecessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
So necessity. It's not just about the immediate threat.
Oh, right.
Right. Like those trolley choice and choice cases suggest a broader view.
Exactly.
It's not just about saving this one person from this one threat.
Right.
You have to consider the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So in choice, killing the attacker might be unnecessary if you could save someone else instead.
Yeah, that's right.
And if there are multiple attackers, you might have to compare them to figure out how to distribute the harm fairly.
Yeah, like in multiple threats,
Right.
you have to minimize the total harm, even if that means harming one attacker more than another.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about cases where the defender limits their own options, like damage, where they destroy their taser?
Yeah.
Does that make the lethal option necessary?
That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
It seems wrong to make a more harmful option necessary.
Right.
But Schwartz argues that even if the lethal defense is excessive, it might still be the lesser evil
Okay.
compared to letting the attacker harm you.
Right.
So you have to consider the whole situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about provocateurs?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you provoke someone into attacking you, can you then defend yourself?
Yeah, so in Provoke, Farzan says that if you do that, you lose your right to self-defense. You've created the situation where force seems necessary.
Right.
But Hex says this creates weird asymmetries.
Okay.
Like, it treats provocateurs worse than people who just attack you out of the blue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a really interesting area.
Mm-hmm.
What about defending yourself against someone who's justified in harming you?
Yeah.
Is that ever okay?
So this comes up because harm can be justified even if the person causing it isn't liable.
Right.
Like lesser evil cases or prerogative cases.
Okay.
So the defensive trolley case is a good example.
Okay.
The workman might be able to kill the engineer who's diverting the trolley.
Right.
So it challenges the idea that defensive permissions are always one-sided.
Okay.
So can justified threateners be liable to defensive force?
Right. Expert speaker.